And today's broadcast is brought to you by Eclectic Horseman Magazine. Stay tuned for Eclectic Conversations hosted by Emily Gitchie.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Adam D'Agostino, who is the head director of the Equine Program at Alfred University. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it to be here.
Yeah. Well, I had never heard of Alfred University, so I think the best place to start would be orient us a little bit and tell us about what makes your school special.
So Alfred University is located in the foothills of the Alleghenies. We're in southwestern New York, just over the Pennsylvania border. Our university has about 1,400 students between our undergraduate and graduate students. It's a pretty special place, I got to say. We call it the Magic Mountain.
Nice.
So we're in a small town. We have one stoplight, and we share that stoplight with Alfred State University as well. So it really is a true college town. And then our institution itself is definitely an older one from the early 1800s. We were, fun fact, the first school to admit women in the United States.
Nice.
So yeah, we have some cool milestones that way. But we offer a very diverse liberal arts offering. Some of our stronger programs are glass engineering, which is really unique. We're pretty close to the world-renowned Corning Museum of Art for glass, and that draws a lot of that type of artistry here. We also have an amazing world-renowned ceramics program, and we actually host the State University for ceramics within our institution. Outside of that, we have an amazing business program. Our equine business management degree falls under that category. We also are really well known for psychology, and we do that from undergrad all the way up to the doctorate level. So we do have a really strong group there. We just launched equine assisted psychotherapy through the psychology department as well this fall, and where we offer EGALA certifications and all those sorts of things. So yeah, it's a really unique environment. We do own a 400-acre farm. We're right south of campus, and the farm is fully heated, which is a necessity in the north. We carry about 40 horses that we use in our classes, and we also have 3 varsity riding teams. So we have hunt, seat, western, and dressage. All 3 teams are fully supported by the institution. So students that want to come to Alfred don't have to pay to play necessarily. So yeah, it's a pretty cool environment. You can dual major here really well. So a lot of our equine business students might be doing anthropology or ceramics or another major as well. So it's really a chance to kind of take unique interests and blend them together, but very much a horse culture. Our dean of the College of Business rides. We have faculty that ride all across campus. So it really is kind of a very horsey campus. Outside of that, we're pretty traditional in the liberal arts.
Wow. Well, okay, my ears are perked up. That sounds like so cool, and the size really sounds like everybody would know each other, and it's a really nice community.
Well,
And
we're big on first name basis here for sure.
nice.
We are a lot of our faculty prefer to go by their first names. All of our coaches go by their first names. The average ratio is 1 to 10, so it's small classes for students to faculty. And I think you're right. That makes that family environment a little more evident.
Yeah, cool. Well, now tell me a little bit more specifically about the horse program. So you mentioned the different teams, but talk a little bit about the different classes that somebody would take through the program.
Absolutely. So we have so the equestrian programs refers to the bulk of everything. Of course, we have the athletic side, and then academically, you can get a bachelor's in equine business management, a bachelor's in psychology with a concentration in equine assisted psychotherapy. We also offer a minor in equine business management. That's really popular with a lot of our like pre-veterinary track students. And then we have equine studies, which is more the general liberal arts direction. Classes that our students that would intermingle with would be like fundamentals of equine husbandry. That's required in all 4 programs of study. That's takes students from who've never touched a horse to at least a level of comprehension that they can be safe in a barn and handle a horse. And then the following class for that is advanced husbandry. And that's a little bit more of an equine science-based course, but it's more for the layman, not so much for the veterinarian. So
Okay.
it kind of is a class where you'll learn to standing wrap, you'll learn to give inoculations, things of that nature. Um, and then we have our riding classes as well. We offer many disciplines, hunt, seat, western, and dressage for that. The Western riders can do ranch riding and reining, and then the more English-oriented riders kind of choose toward dressage or hunter jumper as they get a little more matriculated through our program. And so that's kind of the hands-on group of classes. We also have an equine behavior course. We do have an equine assisted psychotherapy course that is being kind of worked through right now, being that it's new. And then we have all sorts of other classes. I teach all the business courses. So Intro to Equine Business is what every major has to take that does equine business, farm and stable management. And then from there, we branch out into our electives. So we have teaching classes so you can learn to give lessons. We have a judging class. We do a really fun one called History of the Horse. That is required for our equine studies students. So they kind of really potentially are learning more the anthropological perspective of horses. And we're always developing new courses. That's what's really awesome about this program is it can kind of be curtailed to what students are looking for. We have a couple students interested in colt breaking right now. So we're working on developing that type of a course to serve their needs. And that's kind of the benefit of a liberal arts college. Being small, we can be a little more flexible with what our students are interested in. But the core of all those programs is to make, educated horsemen and horsewomen that know what a horse is, but also have traditional business skills or are really able to choose. Do they want to be a psychologist who specializes in EAP, or do they want to be the handler involved in a GALA certified handler? So that's kind of how our academic programs all shape out. I'm working on developing other programs. Those are just not ready to be talked about yet, but we are definitely going to be moving toward a growth period to start offering more academic tracks for students.
Nice. Well, I love the diversity of the different disciplines, and I even saw that you had driving on there in the course list. Do students? Well, I have like 10 different questions I want to ask, but do students typically pick a lane and stay in it as far as discipline, or do you see folks trying out different types of things in the programs?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We encourage them to try everything if they can, if they have the room for it. Some students, they just want to do hunters. That's all they came here to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we're a very open family in that way, where we really try to encourage our students to try at least everything once. So in our academic programs, it's more common to see riders maybe take 2 Western classes and 2 hunt seat classes. But our team, that's where you can specialize really a lot. So our Western riders, some of them take English discipline classes, but a majority of them are trying to ride Western more during the week to make their skill set a little stronger. So it really is dependent on the student, but there's no roadblocks for them. If they ride on the dressage team and want to take a Western class and a hunt seat class and it fits in their schedule, they can do that all in the same semester.
Cool. So tell me a little bit more about the students. Are most folks coming to you with a background in horses, or are they trying it for the first time?
So I would say half our team does that we recruit has horse experience. On the academic side, we tend to attract more the students that have been around horses maybe a little bit, or this is their first opportunity and that they've always loved horses. So it's a pretty strong blend. Half of our students, I would say, are pretty novice when they come here. But that's really the market that we're looking for as well. We do have very advanced students as well. We have world champions and USEF champions that ride here. A lot of them tend to be majors that aren't in the equine world and they're kind of focusing elsewhere. But that changes with every class. So yeah, I would say we have a healthy number of students who've never touched a horse before. And I, as an instructor and as the director of this program, I'm really reaching out to programs like the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy, Detroit Horsepower, to try to bring students intentionally who don't have access to horses and give them access to horses if they want it. So that's really the direction that we're heading, is trying to serve the future of the industry and keep new faces and fresh blood coming in. But we, of course, our bread and butter is people who have ridden before as well. So it's a blend for sure.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so tell me a little bit, well, again, that brings up so many questions. So tell me a little bit about, tell me a little bit about the horses. Like you said, you had 40 horses. Tell me a little bit about them. How did they come to your program?
So we have an amazing and generous alumni pool that has donated to us in the past. We also have just great relationships with donors really throughout the country. Almost every horse on this property has been donated. We have been blessed to be able to purchase a few, but the majority have been donated. And they come from all walks of life. On the Western side, we kind of have a healthy blend of good horsemanship horses and reiners,
Mhm.
and they serve the need for that program. On the hunter side and dressage side, a lot of thoroughbreds and warm bloods, couple quarter horses as well. And all of these horses have some kind of performance background. We're not really a breaking and training program. We're more of a riding academy type situation.
Mhm.
But our students do get to develop some of our greener horses as well, especially our advanced riders. They do get exposure to that. And our horses run the gamut from, schoolmasters to horses that need a little extra support in their training. But overall, I would say our average age of our herd is about 15 years old. We have a couple outliers in both directions. The youngest horse on the farm, we have a 3-year-old, and then we have a 37-year-old mare.
Wow.
She's our team mascot. She has a
Yeah.
great life. She lives in our front field, and she is a happy lady. We do have 2 donkeys as well, and they
Nice.
go hang out with. Her name is Buttermilk, so they hang out with Buttermilk in the front field. And we have a mini as well, and our mini is definitely the school's unofficial mascot. His name is Goose, and he goes to
Goose.
campus a lot to meet non-horse people,
Mhm.
and he's a great bridge to kind of get people more comfortable with the equine thing on campus. So yeah,
Mhm.
our herd is definitely well loved. Our students have their favorites, of course, but this is a pretty special group of animals.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned before a little bit about like recruiting students for the competitive side. Tell me a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so my coaches and I coach the Western team, and I have an assistant coach as well. And then we have 2 Teresas. One coaches dressage, and one coaches hunt seat, and then one of them helps the other one with hunt seat. You'll see us at various events. We promote that on our social media, and so you'll see us at like a youth equestrian development show. I just did 2 of those this past fall. We have someone going to CPI in Florida. We have equine affair representation. So that's where we're out kind of scouting and getting to meet folks. Also, people will just email us. They find us online and they get a hold of the coaches. And so we're a recruit only model. We don't do really walk on tryouts. So we start building relationships with students as young as 7th grade,
Mhm.
and encourage them to come here and take our riding camps in the summer and build a relationship with our coaching staff. And then it really just kind of goes, if it's someone we really want, we encourage them to apply. Once they have been accepted, then they end up depositing and committing to the roster, and they're recruited to the roster in that capacity. And so there's really a lot of relationship building that goes into that on our end. But for
Mhm.
students who are looking to get on a varsity riding team, the best thing you could do is reach out to the coaches. That's
Okay.
really impressive to a coach that a young person would kind of email a coach and say, "Hey, I'm interested in riding for your school." I'm big on the 30-second elevator speech. Just do it in writing. You know, tell me your resume or your cover letter, so to speak. Make me excited to want to recruit you. And if my job's a little easier, then of course I'm going to really help you get there. But it's a tough transition for a lot of students to move either away from home. We're in a pretty rural area, or even transition to college. So we try to really help that feel really comfortable. I've recruited plenty of students that don't end up coming to my institution, and I help them get into another institution more successfully. So we're really looking for the right program for these students. And if I determine in the recruiting process that maybe we're not the best place for them, I'm very open about it. But it's a pretty transparent process. But really, when the students initiate it, not their parents, when they initiate it, that is the best way to go about it, to
Mhm.
grab a coach's eye.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about the students. I've interviewed a couple other program directors, and we visited a little bit about like the with the COVID generation. I know that's sort of a thing. Like,
Yep.
have you experienced some changes in the students that you've seen coming through your programs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really spoiled. My students here are just awesome. I mean, I know every coach will say that, but we don't have a bad egg in the bunch. They're all just excited to be here, hardworking. Our varsity riders have to do varsity shifts, so they're cleaning stalls. And there's always that fear of, oh, they won't want to do it. And no, they do. And then they usually come and find us and ask for more work. So what I find with the COVID generation, it actually was like a system reset for a lot of
Mhm.
young people, because it taught them about valuing the community, not just themselves. There was
Mhm.
a lot of, even though wasn't a great time period for anybody, there were positives that came out of it. And these students seem to be more about the we and not about the me.
Mhm.
They're still 20 years old, so we still have to help them along with that. But yeah, in general, they tend to want to be here.
Mhm.
And I think they learned early on what that isolating feeling can be like. So I just find them generally more social and
Mhm.
more active in the barn, really.
Mhm. What are some of the most like surprising lessons that you see students learn that might through the horses that might not be just about the horses?
So the horses are about 10% of the learning process, really. I mean, that's the what I tell anybody who wants to be a horse trainer or work directly with horses. That's the easy part, right? Like horses generally operate the same. They've done that for generations, and they're pretty, even though they can be unpredictable, when you know the craft, they're pretty predictable. Students are the direct opposite of that. And so as an instructor, I've really had to learn how to focus on each person's style of learning. And what surprises me sometimes is when a student really overcomes kind of their preconceived notions of what they think this should be on their own. You know, that kinesthetic learning process, horses are such good teachers. And so I've seen students kind of figure stuff out. As an educator, I learn from my students as well.
Mhm.
And, you know, when I first started teaching many moons ago, that was certainly surprising to me. It takes a lot to surprise me now, but I am pleasantly surprised when I think something's going to be very challenging for a student and they just knock it out of the ballpark. And I'm addicted to that. I love seeing that. But yeah, that's the type of surprise that I like seeing in a barn. When students are like, "Oh, I really learned this today," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even notice you picked up on that." So that can be
Yeah.
really a very cool part of teaching with horses. And you know, every group is different. It's all like each year they're a different brand, and so
Mhm.
uh, that is a new learning curve year after year. And I think if you're open-minded as a faculty member, it definitely helps you learn as you go how to teach them a little bit stronger.
Mhm. What's your in my world, there's a like I feel like the most of the folks that I interact with are sort of older and some of them are aging out of the activity of riding horses. You're around the other end of the spectrum. Like what keeps you like how do you feel about the world, the horse world that they're going out into when they leave you?
You know, I see a lot of discussion of negativity in the horse industry, and you know, we're in troubling times financially. We've been that way for decades. It's not a new inflation's not a new thing, and we're in a very expensive sport, and there are creative ways to do it. So, what I see about this young generation is they're not fazed by that at all. They're still excited. They're still vibrant. They still want to try to do horses, and sometimes do it in a very creative way. Um, and I think they're ready to take the workload on. You know,
Mhm.
my generation was kind of you go to college, you're going to get a job. Here, it's you go to college, you need to work to get a job. And so that mentality is already different. A lot of it has to come from kind of their interactions with the industry moving on. It's about relationship building. So we teach them that here is that, you know, you need to make sure you're going to set yourself up for success. If you want to go work for a horse trainer, don't just take the first opportunity that jumps at you because you might not be a good match for that person. And you know, that can give you a bad taste in your mouth for the industry if you and
Mhm.
we all have experiences, good and bad, that we grow from, but this age there it's such a crucial decision making period for them. So it's really their entrance to the industry. We helped guard that and steer them in ways for each individual to make sure they're successful. And I think that's kind of the key to the horse industry is as somebody who works heavily with the introduction of the horse industry, I'm really cognizant that my students need to be introduced in the correct manner and through the right channels. It doesn't mean that they're not going to make mistakes. You learned a lot from making mistakes, but I've seen pretty strong successes that way. A lot of my graduates have stayed in the horse business. They might change lanes a little bit, but
Mhm.
they stay in the horse business because they're taught about something's not right for you. Just be honest about it, move on and grow. And you have to teach them to be growth oriented as well and
Mhm.
teach our graduates why it's so important to still be an ambassador for horses everywhere that you go. And I think, you know, it's an exhausting sport. We all ride and it can really wear you down, but you really want to try to be a positive person when you're discussing your industry. And I think that's gotten a little better, but
Mhm,
still there's a lot of discussion around, oh, the horse industry is shrinking. And I don't necessarily agree. I don't think it's shrinking. I think it's reforming. Uh,
mhm,
like any business, there's so much more diversity in the horse industry of what you can do. So areas that used to be maybe an outlet, one of the few outlets that people could express themselves in, that's not the only choice anymore. And, I look at our programs here. We just launched EAP, equine assisted psychotherapy. That's existed for a while, but now it's an avenue that students that come to Alfred can explore. So that's
mhm,
going to pull away from some of my other programs, but that doesn't mean that my other programs are doing not well. It just
mhm,
means that we are now adding more diversity into the mix.
mhm.
So you have to keep a positive outlook. And when you do this work with young people, they will keep you there. They're very entertaining, is, I guess, a great word. And the things they come up with sometimes, it reminds you to laugh during the day and to not take yourself too seriously and to have fun with it, because that's why we all got into this sport, period, is that we enjoy it. Lord knows it's not the highest end of the money making spectrum. And so I'm transparent with that with my students, but that hasn't turned a single one away. You're not going to make millions, at least outright, in the horses, but you are going to make millions in your enjoyment. You're going to really have a fulfilling life. You just got to have a sense of humor as well.
Yes, sir. Um, Tell me a little bit about, like you mentioned that you were developing some new classes and like with things in like the science of the horse industry changes all the time. Like
Yep.
how do you keep pace with changes without like abandoning like tradition, but also being flexible to add as things change over time?
So I think it's, horses don't change that much. What we know about them does, and
Hmm.
how we improve their lives definitely changes. So our core program is designed to get them to the flexible point. And as I'm adding more courses and adding new minors, potentially new majors, it's to increase what our institution can offer. For example, we don't have a bachelor's in equine science. That's not what our school is dominantly known for, is the sciences. But what we do is prepare them for graduate programs where they have dominant
Hmm.
programs. For example, Colorado State, amazing graduate level equine programs. My job is to prepare my students to head toward that. Um, However, it doesn't mean that we will always not be an equine science school. We're just good at what we do now. And so as we start to build out, we're making careful decisions in the classes we teach. It's not just my brainchild. I meet with my staff and make sure this is something that we all agree on. I have an amazing team of educators here, and we all are very industry current. And so we're paying attention to those trends. We have those discussions all the time about, did you see this article, or did you, see what this person's doing in their barn, to try to keep that really fresh for our students. What we're teaching now will be just shaped differently in 10 years. And, that's why I'm keeping this program as flexible and lucrative as possible that way, so we can continue to bend with the market, while still staying true to what our values are, and the
Hmm.
style of what we teach here at Alfred.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the other folks on your
I was a
staff and what?
big team player.
Yeah.
As a coach, that comes naturally to me. And as a leader, I always say I'm a leader of leaders here at Alfred. Any person on my staff could run this entire program and do a good job with it. So there's a lot of mutual respect for what their area of expertise is. I don't pretend to know everything. I know what I know. And my job is to make sure that, the apple cart doesn't tip. That's really what I spend a lot of my time doing. I really try to foster their professional growth quite a bit. Our hunter jumper instructor, our head hunter hunt seat coach, her name's Teresa Shatton, has an amazing background in the hunter jumpers. She is one of the most dedicated coaches I've ever met in my career. And so that makes it really easy to encourage her to do her job at the highest level. And she brings me new ideas constantly. They're not always a yes, but I encourage that brainstorming mentality, because for every 10 bad ideas, there's one amazing idea. And I shouldn't even say bad ideas, but she's one of those people that's always thinking about how we can move forward. I have my dressage head coach. She worked for David and Karen O'Connor. She just is she's more our stoic. I say the reasonable one in the group. She's our more steady Eddie. And she teaches a lot of our EAP coursework. She's really into the horse human connection.
Hmm.
And I learn so much from her every day, just in how she approaches things. And she's been at the Olympic level, at least around that group. So she's such a good role model for our students in that way. She also is a black belt in jujitsu, so she's kind of our tough one in the group. We're always saying, "Can you go lift that for us?" Because she's pretty strong. And then my assistant Western coach, Ashley Wyatt, we actually went to school together, so it's been a cool homecoming to kind of have someone I went through my schooling process with. She's an American quarter horse all-around instructor and trainer. She's been doing that for a really long time. She just joined us this past summer, and she was in Alabama. So she's from the area, thank goodness, so she's ready for winter. But her perspective is so direct with our horses and our students, and it's very refreshing for them. It's really important to me. My student body is dominantly female, and it's important for me to have strong female role models for them. So that's why I say I have the best team in the world. I think that they are great leaders, and they really teach the riders in our school here to hopefully be that someday and be industry leaders. On the operations side, I have the most resilient team you're ever going to meet. Running a 400-acre farm is a lot of work, and they do it relatively seamlessly. I mean, we have a manic Monday every day, it feels like sometimes, but their compassion for their work is really impressive. I mean, they take really good care of our animals. We have some senior citizens here, and so that there's a little more work that goes into that, and they just have it down to an art form. And we're always growing and learning, but that's what's cool about this staff. There's nobody who's super stubborn here. We all have our values and our ethos that we follow, but everybody's here is willing to work with each other and learn from each other. So, like I said, I could talk about them all day because
I
they're
know. Well, I'm like,
super
it sounds
proud
like
of
a
them.
great place to work, and like your joy for what you're doing really comes through, and your message about being a positive ambassador, like
Mhm.
you're embodying that, and that's so wonderful to see. Um, is there
Well, thanks.
any question or any direction of questions that I didn't ask you that we need to visit about? Um,
I think it's always important to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
mhm, mhm,
That's such an important topic for me. That's kind of, I identify as a queer person. I'm very open about that. Our school is a very strong message of safety for that group.
yeah.
But outside of that, I've been doing DE&I work as just part of my life since I was 18. And, we've learned a lot more about why it's important recently. But that's a strong part of my program here. It's really infused in everything that happens at Alfred. And so there really isn't as obvious of a presentation. And we're working toward bettering that a little bit more and having those difficult conversations. I was just part of a chat with all of our sophomore athletes last night called the Human Library. And it was really cool. Our athletics department had these groups of athletes go from person to person and hear their stories. So
Oh,
I talk
cool.
about mine and they're able to answer questions. But just being a role model in that way is so important. But I
Mhm,
think that the horse industry needs to diversify. We've been talking about it. You see it in publications, you see people making that work. But that has to go beyond just diversity. There has to be more equity. And that comes from inclusion. So that's why I am intentionally targeting groups to get students here that maybe wouldn't be the first place you go to market. A lot of schools naturally have to be driven by their bottom line. And so getting students in is important, but we can't get lost in that message to be a good conduit for groups that aren't in horses right now to get access to horses. Um, Horses should be for everybody. I've not met one horse trainer yet that doesn't believe that. But you actually have to go out and pound the pavement and do that work. It also takes a lot of introspective work. I grew up in a very diverse area, and I work in an industry that is not the most diverse.
mhm,
And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think folks get really defensive when they hear that, and it's
mhm,
just I'm talking like a marketer more than I am a person. That
mhm,
our demographic is one thing, we need to expand it in order to keep our business growing. And if you look at horses as a whole as a business, if we don't diversify, we're going to die, so to speak, because the world is changing. And especially as we become a more global economy, horses aren't always super attractive to every demographic. And so when you intentionally become an ambassador and open the doors that way, it actually is easier than you think, and it's going to
mhm,
help your business thrive. Um, I used to do that when I couldn't do it in my program as intentionally. I would do a lot of volunteer work. organizations that would expose me to people who were very different than me. And a lot of times, just those conversations can be so meaningful to give that person an idea like, hey, maybe this is something I didn't think about. And that takes work. I'm not going to say it's easy to do, but I think as a community, the horse business has this amazing function to say, welcome in. Now we have to move beyond that and start going to places to say, we'll really welcome you, but you should try this sport and you should, maybe consider equine husbandry. It's a really fulfilling lifestyle. And I mean, that's happened naturally. I think Yellowstone has helped a lot of people want to be a cowboy. So that's been really helpful. I get that question when my family are from the city. And so I get that question a lot when I'm around some of their friends. Oh, have you seen Yellowstone? And I'm like, well, no, but it's not my style of television, which is fine. But that's so cool that the true side of the horse industry is becoming more evident. But I think it's important for anybody that's a professional in the business to give back a little bit. One of my really good friends who's a YITA coach, she started just on her own at her barn an inner city riding program. It took her many years to work with the city to get the funding for this, but now they're there. And I'm really proud of her because takes extra work to do that. And she has a very successful, very busy business. But that to me is such a role model for the industry. That's somebody who's just using the one Wednesday they have a month to help students build a bridge into horses. And, it might not work for all of the students involved, but if you catch one student who maybe didn't see that pathway, that's only, I guess, one more for our team here, right? So that's how I think about it. But yeah, I think that's so important. And there's so many amazing people in the DE&I industry that work with horses. That those resources are abundant. A lot of times it's just reaching out and asking for help. How do I start a program like this? Or, how do I even make someone feel more welcome in my barn? I'm always happy to answer those questions. My email's pretty easy to find. But there's so many folks out there. And if you just type in, equestrian diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're going to find resources online.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because that was not a question that I thought to ask. So I appreciate that. And I see you have a YITA hat on. That's not that's not a term I've heard before. So tell me what that means.
YITA is similar to the IEA and similar to IHSA. It's a random draw sport. So they're teams, more on the youth side. It's not a college team. So they're going to be barns that are lesson barns and attract students that way. And they create teams. They go to competitions and then they compete in different divisions based on their experience level. And there's also a middle school and high school division. So they go from fourth grade all the way to senior year. They also have an alumni division. Generally, that's students that are still in college. And it's such a cool tool for those kids to practice some IHSA stuff elsewhere. So YITA is really dominant in the Midwest. It was started in Ohio. It's been around, I think, for like 8 years. And the competition's just exploded. Now they have a show at the Congress. Their nationals is huge. And there's some smaller groups in more satellite locations. There's a group in Washington State. There's a Florida group that's growing. I think there's a couple teams in Colorado. So as it's starting to build, the model's amazing. It's such a recruiting powerhouse for us, but it's really oriented on educating students on proper horsemanship, riding well, and starting them really young. And so it really captures their attention on the team mentality in horses, which I think is getting better in our horse industry. And it captures their kind of their whole learning process. All the students wear the same type of outfit. They all have to wear a collared button down and it has the YITA logo on it. So it really sets that playing field even. And those students will draw horses that maybe they haven't had to ride before. So I do judge a number of YITA shows as well. And so it's cool to watch it from outside the pen, but also inside the pen. And I will say the shows are massive, which to me means that our youth are there and they want to show. One awesome thing about YITA, there's no regions. You can show anywhere in the country. And you can try it even if you aren't a YITA member. They do have a try it feature where you can try showing for the first time to see if that's for you. So yeah, their website is showyida.com, YEDA.com, and there's a ton of information on that website. So I definitely recommend it. It's just
awesome. I'm going to go check it out because I've never heard of it before. So that's fantastic.
And Laura would be an amazing interview for you. I mean, Laura Smith is one of the founders, and she's the current CEO. Happy to connect you, but
awesome.
very vibrant person. She's so passionate about that organization, and it for sure is the future of the Western industry. I mean, I've seen some amazing individuals come out of YITA, go work for trainers, and now they're winning at the Congress or winning at the World Show. So that's just cool to see that feed into the business.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's wonderful. And yeah, I will definitely look her up and or would appreciate the connection. That'd be great. Well, thank you so much, and I'll be reaching out with this a little bit later.
All right. Thanks. You have a wonderful
Okay.
day.
All right. Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Bye.